It's not an exaggeration when I say that Path of Exile's Legacy of Phrecia 2.0 League has been the hardest softcore event ever. Extra mechanics-stream boss fights, every zone having additional random challenging modifiers, and let's not forget that all unique enemies become enraged at low life. So when I spun a couple wheels to find out what random build I'd be playing and I got Spellslinger, Daughter of Oshabi, I knew this was not going to be easy. And to make matters worse, the event is only going to be around for 3 weeks, which means we're already running out of time. So I create my ranger and wake up on the beach. Immediately, the extra difficulty becomes apparent when we reach Hillock, the very first boss of the game, and he's been spending way too much alone time with Maven. Dude, isn't she like 5? Thankfully, we're playing the ranger, which means we have one of the easiest Maven witness Hillock fights since we can just keep our distance and shoot burning arrows at him until he dies. But this does give us a taste as to what's to come in the not so distant future. We enter Lionized Watch, grab the Galvanic Shard skill gem from Tarkly, which is basically a lightning shotgun, and immediately buy a bucket he's selling with 2 green and 1 red sockets in it, since having a piece of gear with a 3-link already sets us up for success in the early game. Our first passive point goes into the projectile damage and accuracy node over here, and eventually our loose plan is to go up to the top of the tree and grab a bunch of spell damage and wand related nodes up there, since Spellslinger sort of benefits from both. We will become a wanderer once we can get our hands on Spellslinger, but that won't be happening until Act 3. Right now, I'm just worried about getting there in the first place. With a bow in hand and our trusty bucket on our head, we head out to explore the coast. We run around shotgunning zombies left and right and find ourselves with a pair of 10% move speed boots right off the bat. Fantastic. We meet Aelith, acquire our first flesh graft, aka that extra hand we could all use for bringing in the groceries, and experience our first death at the hands of a couple breach monsters. We come back, protect Aelith while she does whatever it is that she does, which appears to be nothing, and take our horned skull over to the Genesis tree back in her hometown. We grow a new hand to attach to our backs, this one an Esh graft with the Wreath in Light skill, which helps us do a ton of damage to both copies of Hailrake. Back in town, we grab Shrapnel Ballista, which is basically just a giant ballista we can plop down a few copies of for additional damage, as well as the Mirage, archer support which we link with Galvanic Shards. Now, whenever we use Galvanic Shards, a mirror image of us will also use it shortly after for a duration. We kill the Dweller of the Deep and use the Essence it dropped to make ourselves an absolutely unethical leveling bow with 49% increased fizz and 3 to 50 flat lightning damage. This thing is ridiculous. We explore the prison next, and our Act 1 passive tree looks like this, just focused on projectile damage and life for now. Buffed up Brutus tries to get in our way, but our OP bow makes quick work of him. I mean, I'm willing to bet that the majority of you watching did not have a Brutus skill that looked like this. We pick up a nasty little iron ring with 30 life and some other conveniences.
That's a great ring, holy crap.
And make our way through the caves until we face off with Merveil. Except, she's not alone. In fact, it looks like the whole gang is here, as we have to take down all of the different unique monsters or bosses we encountered throughout the whole of Act 1. I wonder if they're going to be doing this for every single act. I certainly hope not. In any case, enraged Merveil and her extra giant helpers don't stand a chance against our OP bow, and we are rewarded with a neat little quiver upgrade before exiting to Act 2. But first, picture this. It's 2001, you're 8 years old, you're at the movies watching Shrek for the first time with a couple of friends. Your parents are sitting an aisle or two behind you, laughing at all the jokes that fly right over your heads, and suddenly a thought pops into your head. What if we could play Halo on this ginormous screen? Well, 23 years later, now you can. Introducing this video sponsor, VITURE, and their Beast XR glasses. The Beast XR effectively puts a 174-inch display right in front of your eyes with a massive 58-degree field of vision. We're talking an extremely sharp 4K-like resolution with 1250 nits of brightness, giving you maximum clarity even if you've accidentally left the comfort of your home. But for us darkness-enthroned exiles, it gets even better. By using the Spacewalker app, you can turn these glasses into a full triple monitor setup. You can have Path of Building open on your left, the game running in the center, and this very video you're watching right now on the right. And thanks to the 3DOF anchor mode, those screens stay pinned exactly where you put them in physical space. If you turn your head to grab a drink, it'll even automatically transition to a lighter screen so you can see what the hell you're doing thanks to its 9 levels of electrochromic film. The immersion here is next level. The 2D to 3D AI magic powered by Immersive 3D is genuinely incredible. It makes playing Path of Exile an entirely new experience, giving your loot on the ground depth and those Herald of Ash explosions an extra pop that is just so satisfying to see. Whether you're at your desk or gaming on the go via your phone, Switch, or Steam Deck, the Beast handles it all. Use code Schwingy for 10% off everything over at viture.us/Schwingy. Huge thank you to VITURE for sponsoring this video. We pick up the pace, blasting through the Chamber of Sins and murdering the absolute monstrosity that is Fidelitas. Back in the Forest Encampment, we get the Herald of Ice gem, which we for some inexplicable reason decide not to use until the end of Act 3. Very smart. We pay a visit to Creighton, the first of 3 bandits we'll be dealing with. Oddly enough, his underlings look dressed to impress. But Creighton's his usual old self, so we decide to kill him anyway, which triggers a totally normal hurricane to appear with us at the center. Back in town, while going through our loot, we discover a nice glove upgrade with dual res and some added fizz, as well as a new pair of boots which are better in every single regard. In the crypt, we find our very first Chaos Orb of the run, the main currency we'll be using to make trades down the road. Nice to have. We reach the second bandit camp and, what the hell? Something seems off here, but I just can't quite put my finger on it. Oh well, not caring for an additional 40 max life, we take Definitely Not Omniphobia down and then go visit the last of the bandits, Miss Alira, who we actually decide to help for the additional 15% all res, because it's actually pretty helpful on a challenging run such as this. Although, yeah, admittedly we're off to a very strong start, making this challenge look easy up until this point, but believe me when I say that I fully expect our good fortune to run out once we make the switch to spellslinger. With Alira on our payroll and the poor captain who got stationed at the wrong place at the wrong time now feeding the earth, we head into the Weaver's Chambers where Aragog awaits us. Did anybody else find that scene to be way too scary as a kid? No, just me? Alright. I never did like spiders, which made this fight extra fun when Arakali joined the party. We explore the dusty and dark Val ruins next, where we got our first unique drop of the run, Perandus Blazon. A decent belt with fire res, rarity, and plus 20 to all attributes. Yeah, we can definitely use that. We climb our way up the Val Pyramid and reach the apex. We push the button and the Val Oversoul rises up from the ground, but of course we have to do another boss rush. Well, okay then, this is gonna get annoying. We take care of all the bosses we've already dealt with a second time, and then finally the Val Oversoul becomes vulnerable and nearly lasers us to death. As it dies, it drops a gold rim leather cap, a unique fashion statement that gives us 39% to all resistances and a fair amount of evasion, making it arguably one of the best leveling uniques in the game, up there with Tabula and Wanderlust, no cap. We'll definitely be wearing this soon, but our main 3-link is in our hat right now, so we'll have to juggle that around first. On the way over to the town in Act 3, we throw an alchemy orb on a basic white bow we picked up, giving it some random mods, and hot damn, RNGesus continues to bless us with great bows. We reach the Sarn encampment, give our gold rim some sockets, and already we're nearly res capped, just missing the tiniest bit of cold res to hit that 75 maximum. And as far as our passive tree goes, we've just been focusing on bow nodes, projectile damage, and movement speed. Act 3 is a blur. We go through the sewers, ignoring Cassia, which will bite us in the ass later on, and make haste towards our impending doom. No, really, we found an accelerating shrine and then Cole straight up one-shot us while we just stood there shooting him. Oh my god, I just got my second death. Goddamn, Cole. It was entirely deserved. We head to the library next and collect the 4 pages to return to Siosa, the friendly ghost who we can finally buy Spellslinger off of. Spellslinger is a trigger spell that reserves some mana based on how many spells it supports. While Spellslinger is active, every time you fire projectiles from a wand, you'll also cast whatever spell you support it with. Most people these days tend to use Spellslinger for utility, throwing a helpful spell in there they want to automate like Tornado or Frost Bomb or something, but in our case, we are going full damage, baby, which leads us to, yeah, we actually spun the wheels a couple more times before even starting this run to determine what trigger, wand skill, and payoff damage spell combo we'd be using. And we got Kinetic Rain Armageddon brand. Oof. Okay, that might be rough. So we grab our 3 necessary skills from Siosa, and before we actually equip them all because we didn't plan ahead and have no wands or appropriate gear to socket these gems into, we decide to finish Act 3 before making the swap. We grab the final Ascendancy Trial plaque thing and ascend the Scepter of God, where we face off with Dominus and his crew. Having to fight Dominus while worrying about Elder's one-shot mechanics is a nice touch, really spices up the fight if you ask me. Dominus falls over regardless though, and we head into the Labyrinth next so that we can get ascended. We run through the maze, fighting Izaro 3 times and manage to take him down on the first try. He drops another unique helmet, this time the Wreath of Phrecia, which, hey, this is the Legacy of Phrecia event. What are the odds of that? We ascend, becoming the adopted daughter of Oshabi, and put our first 2 points into the Oath of the Magi, a really strong node that gives you huge buffs as long as certain pieces of equipment have no gems socketed into them, like gaining 40% increased life if your gloves are empty, or 80% to all res if your helmet is empty, and 30% to move speed if your boots are empty, which, yeah, we're going to be gaining all 3 of those. And now it's time for our big swap to the spellslinger setup. First, we get ourselves a couple wands with nothing special on them, just some added damage to spells. Secondly, we put on that Wreath of Phrecia helmet since we won't be needing the resistances from Goldrim anymore as long as we don't socket any gems into it. And it gives us some more damage and AoE through its unique light radius scaling properties. Thirdly, and arguably most importantly, we do a bit of a passive tree respec, removing all of the bow nodes we had and making our way up to the top of the tree, grabbing this wand mastery up here as well as some spell AoE damage nodes down here. With Spellslinger linked with Armageddon Brand and added cold damage and Kinetic Rain linked to faster attacks, I think we're ready to test this out. So we go fight Vol the Protector, and yeah, this is definitely a downgrade from the bow setup we had, but hey, at least it's functional. I guess now's a good time to go over what both Kinetic Rain and Armageddon Brand actually do. Kinetic Rain, as the name kind of implies, rains down a bunch of projectiles from the heavens that leave behind these little anomalies that trigger and explode whenever enemies walk into them. It scales off of your wand damage, and because we're doing a Spellslinger setup, in our case, it's really just there to trigger the Armageddon Brand. Which, Armageddon Brand, well, that's a fire spell that summons a little fiery ball thing that attaches to enemies and then drops a giant meteoric nuke on whatever's unlucky enough to be underneath of it. I do definitely appreciate the fact that we got 2 rain down from the heavens skills to match. That's pretty goddamn cool it worked out that way. However, Armageddon Brand does not really synergize with Spellslinger all that well since it's kind of duration based. The drop down time for the meteor cannot be reduced whatsoever, and enemies can only have 1 brand attached to them by default, although we'll be able to up that to 2 soon enough through the passive tree, meaning that yeah, we can cast brands really quickly, but they're still limited to just 1 or 2 dropping down on single targets, and you'd really be better off just casting Armageddon Brand off normally, but we're determined to make this work. So we'll see what we can do to improve the situation. And already, after clearing the mines, we have an idea. Armageddon Brand of Volatility. There's no rule saying we can't use the alternate skill gems, and I make the rules, so yeah, we go buy ourselves an Armageddon Brand of Volatility for 1 Chaos Orb, our first player trade of the run. This Volatility variant is special because it does nearly double the damage of the regular version, with the downside that the brand doesn't stick around after the meteor falls like its normal counterpart would. Instead, you have to constantly cast the brand over and over to get more meteors, which, well, that suits our spell-slinging gal style just fine. We then got our very first sale of the league, an 18% quality flicker strike I hadn't thought much of when I found it, that someone was willing to buy for 5 chaos. This gives us a nice little head start on the economy. We head back into Calm's stronghold and put an end to the King's Reign, followed by our duel with Deresso, who summoned way more ice clones of himself than usual. We visit our favorite tree and use a couple of our accumulated ancient womb gifts, which poop out a couple Florida weather themed uniques, the utterly forgettable Stormheart staff, as well as my favorite pair of leveling boots, Nomic's Storm. Why are these my favorite? Because they make you fast AF, boy. A baseline of 20% move speed and then an additional 20 when on full energy shield, pair that with our Ascendancy and a Quicksilver, and dudes, we are zooming. We speed our way through the rest of Act 4, taking out a surprisingly untouched Piety, and then go up against Mr. Malachi, who has a new trick up his sleeve. Introducing the rotating Maven beams, cause why not? If you come into contact with one of these beams, you'll instantly get a debuff that prevents you from recovering any life or mana and gives you a -10 to your maximum resistances. Not ideal. After dealing with the absurdity that was Phase 1 Malachi, I was ready for anything, but thankfully Phase 2 Malachi was just more of those Maven beams, and when he finally died... oh, hell yeah, another subscriber's orb. Thank you all so much for picking them up, and of course your ongoing support for this series. We start Act 5, rush through the Templar Courts thanks to a lucky speed shrine we come across, making one of the deadliest zones in the campaign a breeze, and face off with Innocence, who also had no new tricks up his sleeve. At this point, our damage is falling off pretty hard, so we decide to pick up a couple new wands for 4 chaos total, with fire damage and fire damage to spells, which, yeah, in PoE1, those two things are separate, although with our spellslinger build, we actually benefit from both. Yay. We get to level 49, allowing us to equip those two suckers, and now our tooltip says each meteor does roughly 4,500 damage. Do with that information what you will. We parkour our way across the cathedral rooftops and reach Kitava. We fight through waves of bosses once more, and then Kitava does his thing, except he's also got Malachi's red floaty circle degen things that constantly home in on you. Oh, how could I forget the heart phase with the rotating piety beams. It's a painfully long fight, but through a combination of luck and skill, we somehow managed to come out on top. With part 1 of the campaign behind us, it feels like now is a good time as any to give ourselves a much needed visual upgrade. There we go, much better. Also, we float now. We get to level 50, which signals the game to give us a free 3rd Edict mystery box, which when opened we got... oh well. We push on and experience our 3rd death of the run. Splendid. All is well though, as the Genesis tree granted us our first 5-link chess piece we can use with life, res, and intelligence, something I desperately lack. I mean in real life. Our current 5-link setup is pretty simple. Armageddon Brand with Spellslinger, of course, added cold damage for damage, hypothermia since it gives us good damage against chilled enemies, which added cold handles that, and inspiration for a little bit of crit, some elemental damage, and it reduces the mana cost of our brands quite a bit. We head to the tower next, and on the way we find ourselves with a pair of unique gloves that synergize extremely well with our build, Dodri's Tenure. These gloves are ridiculously simple, giving us 100% increased spell damage at the cost of reducing our cast speed. But considering our Armageddon brand casts are automated thanks to Spellslinger, the downside only affects how fast we can cast Elemental Weakness really, which, yeah, I guess I should have mentioned, we're using Ele Weakness as our curse of choice, although Flammability would be just as good if not better. We climb up the tower, and holy crap, this Shabrutus fight I think is one of the most challenging encounters we've had so far. The rotating corrupted blood vol beams are really tough to maneuver around, and we have an insanely close call, but our MLG gamer reaction speed with our life flask saves the day. Shabrutus goes down, and back in town we finally have enough passive points to go grab a keystone we probably should have prioritized sooner, Elemental Overload. This keystone makes it so that crits no longer deal any additional damage, with the upside that if a skill has crit in the last 8 seconds, it'll now do 40% more damage. And if there's one thing you should know about Path of Exile damage calculations, it's that more is way better than increased, since increases are added to one another whereas more modifiers multiply with each other at the end, and that's an important distinction. We test our new overload setup against the Brine King next, and for some reason this guy sends out tidal waves now. We have plenty of close calls, but in the end, we live to tell another tale. We begin Act 7, die to some Abyss monsters because we get distracted IRL, and then get another important keystone for the build, Runebinder. This is that node that we alluded to earlier that allows us to have 2 brands attached to the same enemy at once, essentially doubling our single target DPS. Huge. It does stop us from summoning totems, but like, we don't even have room to socket more gems, so who cares? We visit the Genesis tree once more and exhaust our supply of ancient womb gifts, resulting in 4 back-to-back useless uniques. We have a fun battle against an Arakali-infused Maligaro in his little demented dream world, and then get absolutely wrecked by Gruthkul and his overwhelming number of Elder Portal spawns. To whoever at GGG thought this was a good idea, why? We fight Arakali next, and hey, our damage is actually looking pretty good now, I'd say. Runebinder plus Ele Overload are both helping out a ton. We decide to visit the Rogue Harbor and do a couple ice contracts because we've ignored this part of the game for years now, and after just a couple contracts and 1 single blueprint attempt, we remember why. Act 8 is entirely forgettable. We kill the Sunbro, die on the way over to the Moon Girl, take her out, not to dinner, and reach level 64 in the process. We fight Solaris and Lunaris, and I don't know if it's just me, but it kinda feels like GGG just forgot to give them some spice. Oh well, we clean things up and then remember to go into the Cruel Lab to be able to get 2 more Ascendancy points. Izaro only lives long enough to do a single leap slam. Perfect. As far as the Ascendancy goes, we can finally put our points towards the spellslinging Ascendancy node, making any spells we've got linked to spellslinger have 50% increased cooldown recovery, which in our case means we'll be spawning brands much more often. It also reduces the amount of mana that gets reserved by spellslinger by 50%, meaning we can fit in more auras and stuff, but that won't really come into play for now since, as ever, we don't have room in our sockets. We push through Act 9, killing Shakira's alter ego, and using a single alteration orb on a cobalt jewel we found, landing this double crit multi-jewel that could sell as is for an entire divine.
Holy shit!
Because we're both equal parts greedy and stupid, we decide to corrupt it with a Val Orb in hopes of making it worth even more, which goes about as well as you'd expect. We start racking up our death counter and finish up Act 9 by getting stunned to death during the fight with the Depraved Trinity while being assaulted by Maven's brain buddy. We rush through Act 10, way too fast if you ask me, considering the immediate death after hitting level 69, nice, and then in the exact same zone after respawning. Oh snap, that is a nice drop to find this early, as it's worth something like 170 chaos alone, and I'm sure it'll help us out when buying gear in the endgame, which we are nearly there. We just need to kill Evil Innocence first, and let's be real, he's honestly like the easiest boss in the game. Well, shit. We come back and die a couple more times, but corpse rushing is a thing, so yeah, it was just a matter of time. Back in town, we stick our first divine into our stash and then spam alterations on this 8 passive fire damage cluster jewel we found, which after a while hit widespread destruction and prismatic heart, which meant it was actually worth quite a bit. And because I know you guys are gonna ask, this price checking overlay tool is called Awakened PoE Trade, and yes, it is very helpful. So while we could maybe use this cluster jewel ourselves, I am a greedy goblin, so I put it up for sale, and it actually sold overnight for 2 divines. 3 div in the bank already, and we haven't even finished the campaign. Let's freaking go. We go to the lab a 3rd time and take out Izaro no problem, which lets us ascend a 3rd time, giving us 2 more points. We put them into woodland shrines, which will trigger little shrine buffs when we kill enemies for us to collect on a 10-second cooldown. I don't expect this node by itself to make a huge difference, and trying to click on the little buffs all the time can definitely be annoying, but hey, it's better than nothing. Innocence does a Kamehameha, and then we go finish off Kitava once and for all, but not before dealing with a boss gauntlet of all the previous act bosses. Goddamn, this is gonna take forever. And yeah, after like 5 long minutes of non-stop fights, we were finally allowed to actually fight Kitava. Thank God. Surprisingly, they just kept the exact same added mechanics from the Act 5 boss fight, so it was pretty manageable and I definitely didn't die. With Kitava down and the campaign now behind us, before we get into the endgame and see how far we can take this absurd build, let's take a quick look at our passive tree. We're level 66 now, and we've got the Wand Mastery over here, increases and reductions to spell damage, also apply to attacks. This is not really a big deal because we're not really doing that much damage with our kinetic rain anyways, kind of worthless. I think we're gonna get rid of that. And down here we have some life nodes, of course, back at the beginning, and the spell suppression. I don't think we'll be getting more, but you never know. We've also got up here the burning enemies explode, which just helps with clear a little bit. It's kind of nice to have the little AoE explosions when you kill big packs of monsters. It helps out a bit. And besides that, we've still got our elemental overload doing a lot of work in terms of giving us a 40% increased damage. Alright, time for the endgame. First things first, we visit Kirok, who's very busy leading on this table over here, and he gives us a choice of 4 maps. Which one you pick doesn't really matter. What's important is to take it to the map device, kill most of the enemies you find in there, and then kill the boss while you're at it, and rinse and repeat with new maps you find while you're out there. Our goal is to more or less progress through this atlas and reach tier 16 maps and then fight off the pinnacle bosses like the Eater of Worlds, Syrian Exarch, and maybe even Maven and Uber Eater if we're strong enough. Considering I've heard that these boss fights are ridiculously hard for this event in particular, we'll see what happens when we get there, if we get there. I should also make a note that at this point, every single zone we enter has 2 extra random modifiers now, like extra damage as chaos or reduced maximum resistances, that can totally screw us over, and there is no way for us to control what we run into. So, as an extra precaution, we make a few purchases, primarily to increase our survivability, cause a 2.5k life with barely any evasion is not gonna cut it. We buy a new helmet with 170 life and 120 light regen for 1 chaos, replacing the Wreath of Phrecia we've been using ever since Act 4. Next, we grab a trio of accessories, an amulet, a ring, and even a new belt, each with life and some resistances. And just like that, we went from 2.5k to 4.1k life. Now that's an upgrade. We also decide to swap our elemental weakness curse over to flammability, which we should have done a while back, but better late than never. In our second or third map, I didn't really keep track, we found ourselves a Taste of Hate flask, which thanks to the perfectly rolled Fizz as extra cold mod on it, sold for 90 chaos orbs. Goddamn, I don't think I've ever been this rich this early. And I'm ashamed to admit it, but yup. Fourth map, and we already have 4 div and some change. Did GGG finally update me to the streamer client? Well, I guess we can afford to buy this 8 chaos corrupted 6-link armor with life and triple resistances. With it equipped and the immolation support gem added to our spellslinger set up for more damage, we get back to mapping. We come across our first breach fortress, a giant horde mode area where you have to keep Aelith alive for 24 waves of breach monsters, which yeah, try as we might, we definitely could not do just yet. Still, we got a giant loot explosion at the end. That was fun. Thinking ahead, we pick ourselves up a new unique helmet, something called the Gull. Remember our Ascendancy node that gives us those little shrine buffs? Well, the Gull inherently does that too, but it also gives us 75% increased effective shrine buffs and 50% increased duration of shrine buffs, and that definitely includes the ones our Ascendancy makes, in addition to any shrines we naturally find while out mapping. And as if that wasn't enough, it also has a fair amount of life and cold resistances while being on an invasion and energy shield hybrid base, so it just slots into our build perfectly. It cost us 20 chaos to buy, but man, it was totally worth it. While we're at it, we also decide to buy ourselves a new wand with even more flat fire damage, added fire damage to spells, and a +1 to all fire spells on top, which now puts our tooltip average damage at 23,000 or so. The actual damage is definitely higher than that since the tooltip doesn't factor in anything conditional, like enemies being cursed with flammability, or whether they're chilled or not. So it's not that helpful. We decide to open our Kirax Vault rewards, aka the Battle Pass, because I get tired of having to click on this little icon every time I log into the game, and the final reward gives us a Valdo's puzzle box. We could sell this as is for 1 divine or so, but I think this whole Kirax Vault stuff is actually pretty damn unethical, so we're just gonna pop this open ourselves and see what we get. And it's worthless, as expected. We keep mapping, reaching tier 5 maps now, and for the most part enjoying the shrine life that we've been given. Some of the lesser shrines we get are more impactful than others, like the massive shrine giving us a ton of extra life and AoE, or the brutal shrine straight up giving us 20% more damage, but the most impactful one we find ourselves is the acceleration shrine. This guy right here is a double-edged sword for us. On most builds, the increased action speed is nothing but upside, but for any cast on whatever build, like spellslinger, cast on crit, or anything else that triggers spells automatically, this can be a problem. And that's because of a little something called cooldown recovery thresholds, or CDR thresholds for short. I won't go into the details because I don't really quite understand the math myself if I'm being completely honest, but the important thing to know is that it is entirely possible for your character to have too much attack speed, resulting in less spell triggers, which in turn means doing potentially way less damage. And yeah, every time we get an acceleration shrine, we end up going over our intentionally balanced attack speed, resulting in less overall damage. That being said, we do still benefit from the increased movement speed it provides, so you know, it's not all bad. Anyways, I figured I had to bring it up, and through the rest of the playthrough, you can just assume that I've been doing my damn best to balance our CDR and attack speed so that the build runs smoothly. Although at the same time, our brands are hard limited in how quickly they can drop meteors down from the sky anyways, so does it even matter? Maybe not. We keep progressing into yellow tier maps, properly meeting Maven for the first time, which lets us progress that whole endgame quest chain, and then we buy ourselves a couple more upgrades. First, a Val Grace gem, which gives us more evasion at the cost of reserving a huge chunk of our mana. Secondly, a pair of new unique boots called the Legacy of Fury. These actually drop off of Maven herself, and as we discover, they are pretty great. They give 30% move speed, make it so that nearby enemies are scorched, which basically lowers their elemental resistances, and they also have this built-in AoE corpse burning effect thing that can seriously help with clearing giant packs of monsters. Third, we upgrade our gloves to a corrupted pair of Dotri's Tenure with the curse enemies with elemental weakness on hit implicit, since that will allow us to drop our flammability gem to make room for the new grace gem we just got. Last but not least, we buy ourselves another new wand with more of the good stuff. So now both wands we have are up to snuff. Oh, also we got this new soft graph extra arm thing that covers enemies in ash automatically, making them take more fire damage. With all of these upgrades, the build is feeling much better. Although I will say, mana is becoming more and more of an issue now that we're reserving so much of it. However, I have a plan. Alright, so I'm going to do a bit of a respec here because I think that if I remove some of this stuff here, so I've got some AoE nodes here, I can remove those, and then The goal here is actually to be able to grab Eldritch Battery so that the energy shield I have, if we read that, goes on top of our mana instead. So let's apply that. Boom. So now our ES, which is not a lot, but now it acts as mana. And then I also want to combine that with this node here so that my spell damage can actually leech energy shield. Now, hopefully what this means is that mana sustain will be better, because what's happening is I'm constantly running out of mana, which is not great. Just doing this a whole bunch is problematic, but when I'm leeching, I think I'll be okay. I may have to put 2 more or 3 more points in here and then get the 5% of leech's instant mastery to make it feel better. We're gonna see.
And when we test it out, it's working out splendidly. We keep mapping, successfully completing our very first Hive Fortress and enjoying the loot explosions that follow. Receiving a nice +2 to minion skills helmet with double resistances and nearly 50 int thanks to the tree, which we put up for sale for a whopping 7 divines, although I have a feeling it won't sell for quite that much. As far as our farming strategies go, we're not really doing anything special just yet. We're using the completely random idols that we happen to find and purely rely on random drops to grow our wealth. Eventually we'll want to specialize into specific mechanics. I'm thinking maybe Einhar Beasts or Alva or something, but we'll figure that out when we get there. Feeling pretty strong and wanting to get it over with, we head into the labyrinth one more time to try and complete the Uber Lab and get fully ascended. While running around looking for a golden key, which unlocks a golden door, we accidentally run into Argus, the Emperor Exaro's doggo. Knowing that this angry beast hits like an absolute monster truck, we make damn sure to stay away from him so that he doesn't even get a chance to touch us. Still looking for that golden key, we come across a secret passage, allowing us to skip past the golden door entirely. Wow, I'm not sure I've ever run into one of these organically. I guess this is what can happen when you don't listen to the labyrinth's golden rule of "thou shalt go up and to the right." Anyways, we found our way over to Zaro's rooms and beat him up 3 times in a row. The guy just can't catch a break. For our last 2 ascendancy points, we of course grab the innate blessing node, which gives us a random shrine buff every 8 seconds. Yes, that's right, not just the lesser baby shrines from the Gull or the other node, no. We get the real deal now. Spell Echo, full acceleration, gloom explosions, it's all in there. And immediately, in our very first map with this new ascendancy node, the difference is night and day, as we can regularly stack 4 to 5 shrines with ease. Unfortunately, that didn't make this map any less dangerous, as the mods it had randomly received due to the Phrecia event were absolutely brutal. No matter, we pick ourselves up and get back to it. We run into our first Exarch altar, which now lets us start making progress towards fighting the Blackstar and Syrian Exarch bosses down the line, and get ourselves a Discipline gem, which gives us more energy shield and actually makes it so that we don't need mana potions at all anymore. We start purposefully including beast mods in our idol setup, since I've never really farmed beasts before and I figured it can't hurt to try. That was a mistake. We keep pushing through the Atlas, 1 map at a time, reaching level 84 in a tier 10 map, and then finally remembering that, hey, wait a minute, scarabs are a thing. I don't know why I do this, but I always think of scarabs as a post-Voidstone obtention kind of thing, but really, there's no reason not to use the currency exchange to buy scarabs now, especially, since we're still sitting pretty on 3 entire divines. As for which ones we use, well, domination, obviously, duh. We can add more shrines to our maps, taking full advantage of our Daughter of Oshabi Ascendancy, which makes these maps just that much more fun and easy. Maybe even too fun, as, yeah, guys, I think we broke the game.
A few moments later.
Oh my god, we survived that somehow.
We get to level 85, capture a Phenumal Arachnid, which I think means we can go fight Venomous in the Menagerie and get one of his unique drops. I don't think I've fought him before, so we give it a shot, and damn dude, this spider is not messing around. Eventually, the bug gets burnt to a crisp and drops its boots, which are worth about 30 chaos. Not bad. We continue grinding those maps, finally hitting red tiers where we get our first Polaric Invitation. And this allows us to go face off against the Blackstar. Blackstar is one of the most chaotic fights for any build that doesn't manage to burst her down right as she spawns, aka us. She creates clones, casts fiery beams in our direction, and can even summon meteors from the sky. The whole gimmick with this fight is that you're supposed to manage which half of the arena you're standing on depending on which skill she's about to use against you. Oh, and it's also dependent on these rotating cold and fire zones on the ground. This made it extremely difficult to manage when we encountered a little problem after our first death. The zones stopped moving. Or at least, from our perspective, they did.
As far as the game servers are concerned, they are still spinning around like normal. We are still gaining the resistance buffs they would grant, but besides staring at this tiny little icon on the top left of our screen, we had no way of knowing which of the two zones we were actually standing in or even how fast they were rotating. That made what was already a difficult fight for us exponentially more challenging. Thankfully, with just one portal to spare, we were triumphant. Our reward for completing such an incredibly difficult task? Nada. To console ourselves, we buy a new amulet, something we haven't upgraded since we first got to maps. We end up grabbing this gold amulet with 127 life, lots of fire res and chaos resistance, crit chance which just helps us proc elemental overload more often, spell damage, and the non-challenge skills have -7 to total mana cost, which is kind of overkill, but it's nice to have. We go ahead and buy the oils we need in order to anoint it, except wait, we can't. What the hell? Oh damn, we skipped a quest we needed to do to unlock anointing. I didn't even know that was a thing. So we went back to Act 3, met up with Cassia, and did our first blight of the run, and now we can anoint our amulet. We choose to give it the Divine Judgment Notable, which just flat out increases our elemental damage by 50%. At this point, I realized that the whole farming beasts thing was really dumb. Our single target damage is by far our biggest weakness, and those red beasts get tanky as all hell. So we pivot into Alva Temples. I don't know, it's just a comfort pick for me at this point. I know how to make good temples with the Locus of Corruption rooms pretty consistently, and you can do it in any tier of map, so it seemed like a no-brainer to me. We get another divine drop, reach level 87, create ourselves some great temples which we can sell for about 1 div each, and pick up a new belt with increased cooldown reduction, which I figure gives us a bit more wiggle room when we get these shrine buffs, but ultimately I don't really know if it makes a difference. As well as this new pair of gloves with the 42% increased damage with hits against chilled enemies mod, and a bunch of cold res and chaos res for an entire divine, our biggest purchase yet. This replaces our Dodri's tenure, finally. But first, we want to change the Exarch and Eater implicits that came with it by spamming Ichors on them until we get what we actually want. It takes a while and costs us about 100 chaos worth of Ichors, but we eventually land on Unnerve on hit and Fire Exposure on hit, which drastically increases our damage. Much more than the Dodri's tenure we've been relying on this whole time. And to solve the where are we gonna stick our flammability curse issue, we socketed in a Mark of Submission unset ring we found at some point along the way. It's a pretty common drop. Boom, flammability on hit acquired. A few maps later, another boss invitation drops. This time, it's the Infinite Hunger. Knowing that this fight is a complete pain in the ass, we decide to grab a totally normal level 21 Armageddon brand specifically for fighting bosses, thinking that yes, it does less damage, but it's more than made up for in the fact that we only have to use our kinetic rains a few times every several seconds for a constant DPS uptime, as opposed to what we've been doing where we have to stand in place and just keep spamming kinetic rain over and over to dish it out. So we test this out against the equal parts disgusting and annoying boss, and well, yeah, I guess it kinda worked. We managed to only die one time, which is a pretty big improvement over the Black Star fight, but let's be real, that's not really saying much. With both of those lesser pinnacle bosses out of the way, we now have the Eater of Worlds and Searing Exarch to look forward to. And by the way, we go back to using the Armor brand of Volatility. I can't really say that I'm convinced the regular version is an improvement. We get to level 88, kill the Breach boss Vroon for the first time, dropping what I assume is his head and not somebody else's, and bring it to Aelith, who gladly sticks us with another arm. Great. Our Atziri cosplay is complete. In an attempt to gain more damage, we decide to ditch the Discipline aura and replace it with Skitter Boss, which serves two purposes. One, it chills enemies that are nearby, making that mod on our gloves more reliable, and two, it shocks enemies, which just makes them take more damage. We also grab a new body armor for 40 chaos with 260 energy shield, which kinda makes up for the loss of VS we were getting from Discipline in the first place. We do a slight respec on our tree, removing the projectile nodes we passed through back at the very start of the run, and instead grabbing the dex nodes off to the side, which allows us to put some points towards these curse nodes up here that reduce cursed enemies' life regen, an issue we're running into a lot. We keep leveling, getting to 89, farming some more temples to sell, and overall enjoying the craziness that stacking tons of shrines entails. We reach level 90, getting us another mystery box, which surprises us with an unremarkable pair of boots, and then have a very long, drawn-out battle with our first tier 16 map boss. Or well, should I say pair of bosses. We run out of flasks entirely, but still prevail, at which point they drop the Screaming Invitation, the quest item that'll let us fight the Eater of Worlds. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't think we're ready for this, but there's literally no harm in trying, considering if we fail, we'll just have to run another tier 16 map to get another chance. So let's do this. We enter the arena, the Eater of Worlds drops down from the heavens, and our battle begins. So far, so good. The fight actually looks pretty normal. The only additional mechanic I see are these water pillars off to the side, but they don't seem to do all that much. We quickly discover that that's not all Eater has up his sleeve when we get caught off by his giant AoE hunger move, and it completely one-shots us. We come back and slowly whittle him down with our less than stellar damage until he goes into his first of many immunity phases. The tracking laser beam is freaking giant, but somehow we squeeze by to awaken all the orbs. He becomes vulnerable again, and we die. This death reminds me that even boss areas like this one get those 3 extra random modifiers, and I decided to check them out, and sure enough we got some extremely deadly mods here. Double increased AoE, increased max life, and 93% extra fizz damage as cold. Yeah, that explains a lot. We come back and it's not even close. We don't even manage to get him down to half-life 3. But on the plus side, that +2 minions helm we got from the Genesis tree earlier finally sold for 2 divines. Yay! Well, I've gotta say, I went into that fight not expecting to win, but I thought it would be a closer fight than that. We're gonna have to rethink our strategy, I think. We go back to mapping, hit level 91, and got our Incandescent invitation, the quest item needed to fight the Syrian Exarch, which I've just accepted, we're not ready for yet. Feeling deflated, unsure about whether this spellslinger brand build I had concocted was up to the task of taking down the first 2 Voidstone bosses, and frankly running out of ideas in terms of how to scale our damage up significantly besides like maybe getting a replica Dragonfang with +3 to Armageddon brand, I did something I don't usually do with these builds. I asked for help. I put out an open request for build critique sharing my POB in a small private build creators Discord I'm part of, and thankfully someone much smarter than me rose to the occasion. That someone is Cyclone, or Definitive. So big shout out to him for putting me on the right path. With a few of his suggestions implemented, we more than doubled our damage. So how did we manage that? First, we ditch Armageddon brand of Volatility, instead opting for the other alternate version, Armageddon brand of Recall. This one is special in that it does more damage than the normal version as long as it was triggered by a spell called Brand Recall, as opposed to the normal way brands get triggered, which is by them attaching to enemies. In order for that to work on our build, we need to set up a second Spellslinger gem setup where we have Spellslinger linked up with a maximum level Brand Recall we just bought for 1 divine. Level is important because it lowers the cooldown on Brand Recall, meaning we trigger the brands more often. Obviously, in order to fit a second Spellslinger setup in our sockets, we're gonna have to give up one of the Oath of the Magi Sensei node perks we've been getting. It's a tough decision to make, but we decide to ditch the increased maximum life from the gloves over the 30% increased move speed from the boots, since losing the move speed would make the build feel really bad to play. So now, whenever we cast Kinetic Rain, 2 things happen. First, an Armageddon brand of Recall pops up, and secondly, it gets warped to our location and immediately triggers the meteor drop that deals all the damage. Cast enough of those in a row, and you end up with 7 meteors falling down in a nice little nova around us about once every 1.2 seconds, thanks to nodes like Brand Equity and the Brand Recall cooldown reduction mastery. So yeah, against bosses, 7 meteors falling down at once every second or so instead of the usual 2 we were getting before should make a huge difference. We tested out in some maps and it seems to work. The playstyle is definitely a little different as we've lost quite a bit of range, but I'd say the single target DPS we've gained more than makes up for it. Feeling more confident than ever, we give the Syrian Exarch a try. Man, we got destroyed. Once again, the random zone mods screwed us over, as he gained an extra 76% of Fizz as lightning and got 23% more health. But honestly, we probably would have lost anyways because we were absolutely not mentally prepared for the 3 Shaper Clones to show up blasting us with Kamehamehas. In hindsight, I think our reliance on being closer to our enemies might have actually made this fight harder than it would have been before the Brand Recall swap. Oh well, we didn't win, but we're also not going to give up just yet. We get back to mapping, and that's when a friend of mine makes a really goofy suggestion. Body swap. I've never used body swap, but I know it teleports you to corpses while blowing them up, and I figured it might be fun to at least try, so I give it a shot. Holy shit. Visual clarity, who needs it? Not us. This is like Flicker Strike at home, but god damn it, this is what the build's been missing all along. I mean, it's actually a terrible idea to use against bosses, and we definitely won't be doing that, but for mapping, this is awesome. Get the right combination of shrine effects, and you are freaking zooming through the map at Mach 10. After having a bit of fun blasting through maps, we get another Eater of Worlds invite and give it a second try. Thankfully, the extra mods this time just make him tankier, so our increased squishiness hopefully won't be a problem. It's a long fight, clocking in at over 3.5 minutes, with one unfortunate death during his last immunity phase due to running out of flasks, but when we come back, we finally manage to secure our first Void Stone.
You win!
Before trying the Searing Exarch again, we do two things. First, on the mapping side of things, we pick up this amazing Conqueror's Idol for 100 Chaos that gives us 3 things we want. Time gained from kills is doubled for incursions, which just makes them easier. Your maps contain 2 additional shrines, we love shrines, and most importantly, shrines in your maps grant a random additional shrine effect. That's right, every time we click on a shrine now, be it the ones built into the map, the ones from our scarabs, the ones from our idols, or the ones from our ascendancy, we get a second random one too. This is actual shrine madness. We probably could have gotten this much sooner, but it totally slipped my mind. It honestly feels so crazy, almost like a headhunter really, especially when you get that Gloom Shrine and those giant purple pops. Ah, sweet bliss. That's what PoE1 is all about. Anyways, the other thing we do before giving the Searing Exarch another go is we craft the Trigger a Socketed Spell when you use a skill with an 8-second cooldown mod on one of our wands. Why? Because we can put another brand recall skill gem in there, and it'll trigger independently from this spellslinger one we have, meaning we'll get more meteors falling from the skies on 2 different cooldowns. Or in plain English, it's more damage. So, doing more damage than ever, we hit up the Searing Exarch once more, and fail again. We're getting close though, and I want to highlight this final death in particular because it shows just how much the random shrine buffs we get can really screw us over. Ball phase plus sudden acceleration shrine equals certain death. We get a third invitation. Same story. The fight just keeps lasting too long, and the arena gets filled up with those deadly glyphs, not to mention the freaking triple shaper beams, the enraged exarch, and the extra random mons. It's like a lot to deal with when you have to also be pretty melee to deal any damage, and your best defense is not getting hit. We get a 4th invitation, and this is the run. I can feel it. The mods are nothing deadly, thankfully, although I suppose temp chains is debatable, but let's see this through, shall we? By some miracle, we clutch out 2 ball faces in a row and bring him all the way down to like 5% health before getting blasted by double shaper beams. Before heading back in, we socket the Culling Strike Gem linked to our Kinetic Rain, and now it's time to defeat the Searing Exarch once and for all. We jump back in and instantly get the kill. Hell yeah, finally! That was so much harder than usual, but hey, at least we did it. We successfully managed to get the first 2 Void Stones in this incredibly challenging Legacy of Phrecia event. It only took us 29 hours and 110 deaths to get here. Not bad, all things considered. Now, my initial plan for this video was to try to get all 4 Void Stones, but unfortunately, this was just not gonna happen. Over the next couple days, I started farming Maven invitations so that I could unlock the ability to fight her, and even went so far as to attempt the fight itself. But it was immediately apparent that my build in its current state was simply not up to the challenge. I couldn't even survive her first phase. At the end of the day, we ran out of time. The 3-week-long Legacy of Phrecia event was over. We failed, but we learned a lot along the way and had a great time seeing the evolution of this ridiculous build as it went from 0 to somewhat hero. Big thank you to all channel members for your ongoing support, and thank you specifically for liking and leaving friendly comments. I do read them all and appreciate the crazy support you guys have had for the series. Thanks again to VITURE for sponsoring this video. These glasses are actually so much fun to use, and I'll see you all in the next one.
What is this? Divine Retribution?